Alright, welcome back to the Barbell Medicine YouTube channel and Instagram TV, wherever you're catching this. This is another training review. This footage is from Friday, July 6th of 2018. So we've got myself and Baraki. I'm doing some deficit deadlifts, he's doing pause deadlifts. We're both messing around with the football bar for bench press. I'm doing regular touch and go. He's doing some pin work with that bar. And then also we have some pendlay rows or barbell rows, whatever you want to call them. Let's answer a question from the viewers. This question was from Connor Hillickys from Dublin, Ireland. Excuse my terrible accent. So he actually messaged me asking if he should use caffeine before he's going to train, even though he's going to be training at 9 p.m. And my response was probably not. Now it is true that caffeine metabolism and how people tolerate caffeine is depending on their individual sort of naivety or tolerance to caffeine. So if you're a caffeine user and you tolerate it just fine and it doesn't mess with your sleep, then you could theoretically make an argument that you can use caffeine at night to no ill effect. However, most folks who use caffeine late at night, it does tend to disrupt their sleep. And one of the first things that I address when discussing, improving someone's sleep is eliminating caffeinated beverages, 8 hours prior to the desired sleep time. So it seemed unlikely that he was going to, be up for another 8 hours. And the benefits that caffeine can have on the workout are not worth the ill effects that caffeine would have on his sleep. Now it is true that caffeine does tend to improve performance even after you've developed a tolerance to it. So if it was a high priority workout, he had a meet coming up and this workout was super important for determining opening weights, or the performance of the session was very, very important, then maybe my answer would be different, although again unlikely given that he was going to go to sleep right after training. Which actually brings up another point, that training before bed does tend to increase the amount of time that it takes to go to sleep once you get in bed. So that's called sleep efficiency. That's basically the ratio between the time in bed and the time you spent asleep in bed. So it worsens the sleep efficiency. However, people do tend to get into the deep sleep ranges and REM sleep a little faster, even if they have decreased sleep efficiency from training at night. That all being said, if someone's struggling with insomnia, another thing that we'll do in addition to limiting the caffeine intake 8 hours prior to bed is trying to adjust the workouts, particularly if we can get them done earlier in the day. Again, that's a bunch of nuanced information, but the take-home point on caffeine use around training should be that I think it can be a benefit. You should probably not use it on every single training session, because by definition every single training session can't be super important. If they're all very, very important, then that means they are all not important or unimportant. So I would say for really the most important ones, the highest priority training sessions, don't use it before bedtime. And now you guys also know the effect that training has on your sleep architecture, in that it worsens sleep efficiency, but it does tend to make you get into REM sleep a little faster. So the trade-off overall is okay. It's not something that I would really worry about, unless you do have repeated bouts of insomnia, in which case I try to move the workout earlier in the day if possible. So now let's go into the footage here. Okay, so we'll start out with myself. So yep, last week we did 500 for 8. Here is 515, so that's 5 45s and a 10 on each side. And I use, again, straps for all my supplemental lifts, particularly with high rep work. And there's also like 100 degrees in the gym, so I didn't want to tear my hands. Just not worth it, to be honest. So I am looking from the side at the York logo to see if it moves forward or backwards. That would tell me if the bar was in the correct position. And it has been for these reps. So the next set, or if I were to review this set again, then I would kind of move up the chain. I would look at my feet to make sure that I'm not on my heels at the top, or my heels aren't coming up on the way up, meaning that I shifted my weight forward. And then I'm also going to look at my back to make sure there's no active movement of my back, or not a bunch of active movement of my back under load. So let's check out my back on this particular set. Lumbar spine is fine. My thoracic spine, is pretty good. Yeah, so I'm looking at it and I don't see a bunch of egregious movement. I mean, I do have a kyphosis, so that means that my thoracic spine is rounded a little bit like that just naturally, and I think I tend to overextend it on the floor just because I want it to look real pretty, but it's going to move back to that normal relationship that is not extended or not flexed. Yeah, so that's 100% fine. The only other feedback I'd give myself here when looking at that is that I'd still want to finish with my chest a little prouder on each rep, but I think I'm getting better comparatively. Here's me using the football bar. Now these are supposed to be touch and go, but I kept hitting the rack on these things because the bar is pretty wide compared to the rack uprights. Now this is 275. Here we'll do it again, and I'm doing the self lift off again, so I'm much closer to the rack than I want to be. But the mechanics are similar to a close grip bench press here, that the bar's going to touch lower, elbows are going to be tucked in closer. That means the humeri are going to be more adducted than a standard bench press. But yep, the hips aren't coming up off the bench. That's another thing I check, and that looked pretty good for some touch and go bench press. Now, these are pendlay rows, and my preference for these are that they should be done heavy for fairly high reps. Now, so this is 315, 412, and yeah, I use body English to get these things going. That being said, I do touch my abdomen every single rep, and I think that when done this way, they tend to have a good carryover relatively to pulling, and I think, you know, you're setting up very similar to a deadlift here, and the main thing is making sure that the barbell touches your abdomen somehow. You can do them more strict if you like. I just don't tend to find a good benefit for me for my deadlift. Here's Austin doing pin press. Now this is probably 1 inch above chest level. This is 300, and he's using the wider handles than I was, and I think that has a more direct sort of carryover to his you know, competition bench if he can tolerate that. The problem is his elbow's been bothering him a bunch, and he hasn't been able to bench press regularly for quite a long time, although he did bench like 430 when he got back to benching a few months ago. But right now he's just working with the football bar. So this is, let's see, 495. He's doing pause deadlift. So again, let's watch the logos on the plates. They don't move forward, so that means it's directly over the middle of the foot. We look at his feet. They're perfectly flat, so his balance is correct. We look at his back angle. It's not really moving, and he's pausing quite nicely. Yeah, so he pauses about 1 inch lower than I pause, and I think that's fine. We prefer to pause in different places, and he's using straps as well because it's super hot down in San Antonio, and these are for a bunch of reps, and tearing a hand open is no good. So this has been another edition of our training blog form review. We also answered a question, so hopefully make these things useful for you guys. If you want us to answer your questions, send us an email, barbellaudio@gmail.com. If you want us to review a video of you lifting, send us a video to barbellaudio@gmail.com, and it should be filmed 4K landscape. That's the wide angle. All right, at 30 or 60 frames per second. You guys can do that on your smartphones, I believe, and we'll try to get to them. So send us a whole clip. It's got your whole body, the whole barbell and weights in the frame, ideally from a side view or a side at like a 45-degree angle. Both of those will work, and we'll see what we can do. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Subscribe for more content, and we'll catch you guys next time.